We are live.
We'll call this estimates meeting to order. Roll call has been taken by the clerk.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Members of the committee, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest for any of the items on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move into the budget overview presentation. I'll now ask Joelle Daniels, Commissioner of Corporate Services and City Treasurer, to please come forward and speak to the 2024 to 2027 multi-year budget. Please note that you have 10 minutes to present and that questions will be held until this item is on the floor during the debate portion of the meeting.
Good afternoon, Chair Martin and members of the Estimates Committee. I'm pleased to present to you today an overview of the 2024 to 2027 City Services operating and capital budgets. The development of the city's first multi-year budget has been a very large corporate-wide effort, and I want to thank City Council, CAO Hutchings, the entire senior management team, all departmental staff, as well as our finance team for their dedication shown throughout this process over the last year. A copy of this presentation has been added to the document section of your January 27th meeting folder if you do wish to follow along or refer to it later. After many years of discussion on the matter, the city's first multi-year budget is finally here. The multi-year budget process is becoming a trend in many progressive growing municipalities, including the cities of Guelph, Waterloo, London, St. Catharines, and Chatham-Kent. There are several benefits from implementing a multi-year budget process. It improves accountability, it encourages a focus on longer-term goals and objectives, it provides taxpayers with more certainty about the direction of city services, finances, and future budget increases, and it allows for more strategic use of staff and council time to prepare and review budgets annually. The new strong mayor powers have also changed the budget process for this year. The province extended strong mayor powers to Brantford and other municipalities in July of 2023. The powers include a requirement for the mayor to prepare a proposed budget for the municipality on or before February 1st each year. It's important to note that this draft budget is not the mayor's budget. It is a staff-prepared budget provided to the Estimates Committee for the purpose of making recommendations to the mayor in accordance with his direction to staff provided on November the 1st. After the mayor delivers a budget on February 1st, council will have the opportunity to formally amend the budget. The February timeline will follow a schedule that complies with the legislation, beginning with the delivery of the mayor's proposed budget on February 1st. Within 30 days, council will meet for the purpose of considering any proposed amendments to the mayor's budget. A meeting date has been scheduled for February 15th for this purpose. The 30-day period can be shortened by council resolution. Once all amendments are considered, the mayor has 10 days to veto any of the approved amendments. The 10-day period can also be shortened by the mayor. If the mayor were to veto an amendment, council can meet within 15 days to override a veto. However, an override would require a 2/3 vote of council. With this new process, council will never formally approve a final budget. The budget is deemed to be adopted once all of the steps in the legislative process have been exhausted. Before we get into the numbers, we wanted to present some key financial comparisons against other municipalities with populations greater than 100,000 to demonstrate that we're very much in line with others. These indicators include, firstly, the average residential taxes per household, which for Brantford is at the low end, only behind Windsor, Chatham-Kent, and London. From an affordability perspective, property taxes as a percent of median household income for Brantford is also lower than the average, Brantford being at 3.8% versus an average of 3.9%. Discretionary tax-supported reserve balances per capita are slightly lower than average. However, that average does improve when we compare total reserves per capita, which includes both rate and tax reserves. When it comes to our current debt burden and annual debt servicing costs, Brantford is quite low compared to others, both as a cost per capita and as a percentage of revenues. Lastly, our asset consumption ratio is higher than the average, meaning Brantford's overall pool of tangible capital assets is more into their useful life than others. This could be an indicator that our capital replacement needs are higher, which is supported by the infrastructure funding gap identified in the city's asset management plan. As such, the multi-year budget does include a 0.25% annual incremental increase to capital replacement reserves beginning in 2025. It's important to note that municipal budgets are not immune to inflation and that the city's portion of the budget has not kept pace with inflation for a number of years. Annual CPI is still hovering above 3%, following on the heels of a 6.8% increase last year. The most recent quarterly non-residential construction index was 6.6%, following last year's increase of 15.6% for the same quarter, and is impacting greatly on our capital program. Base inflationary and contractual impacts count for 86% of the gross expenditure increase in 2024. Staff continue to find efficiencies in each budget. However, there is not much more to be gained from an organizational design perspective. Furthermore, we did want to highlight that the time saved from a multi-year budget process will allow staff to shift its focus from a perpetual budget cycle to other efficiency-generating tasks, such as tracking of KPIs, undertaking internal process reviews, and participating in rotational service reviews through the Finance Committee, which is a requirement under the approved multi-year budget policy. As mentioned earlier, the city services portion of the budget has not kept pace with inflation for a number of years and has been below 2% in each of the last 4 years. The low increases to the city services budget have continually mitigated the larger increases seen each year in the combined board budgets. There are some other municipalities who have already approved their 2024 budgets or have released preliminary budgets. The municipalities on this slide include both single-tier municipalities as well as lower tiers whose upper tiers have also approved a budget at this time. As mentioned, municipalities are not immune to inflation, and publicly released increases range from 4.9% to 8.52% for 2024. London, being the lowest on this graphic at 4.9%, has indicated publicly that 4.9 is for base services only and does not include any of the over 70 service enhancements they're considering at this time. The city services portion of the budget as drafted by staff represents a 4.99% budget increase, which is below most of the comparators who have released information to date. This increase would add $9.74 a month or $116.93 annually to the average residential household with an assessed value of $285,000. Please remember that assessed values are not indicative of market value and have not been increased since the 2016 province-wide reassessment. This slide is to simply summarize the key drivers on the city-controlled portion of the budget, with the red shading indicating the pressures on the budget, which are largely related to inflation and contractual increases, and the green shading indicating where reductions to the budget have been made. The draft budget prepared for the committee is a multi-year budget, which includes all estimated and planned increases and decreases for the next 4 years. The resulting estimates include ups and downs in each year, and staff are recommending to use funds from the Tax Stabilization Reserve in 2025 and 2026 and repay these amounts in 2027. This will smooth out the city services budget increase for each of the next 3 years to between 3.73% and 3.79%. The budget also includes a fully funded 4-year capital plan, which for the city services portion totals $138 million and $656 million over the 4 years. The growth portion of the budget begins to exceed the non-growth portion in 2026 as the city begins to construct services to accommodate growth in the expansion lands. So how are we funding that? There are several primary sources that are used to fund the capital budget. Developer contributions, including development charges, are used to finance the growth-related portion of the budget. The Canada Community Building Fund can be used for a variety of infrastructure improvements. Third-party contributions include provincial and federal grants, and the city is always looking at grant opportunities from other levels of government to fund the capital program. We also can access our rate-funded reserves and our tax-funded reserves. And lastly is debt financing. In our case, for the next 4 years, most of the debt requirement in this plan is to support growth-related capital works that would be serviced by developers through future DC receipts. Tonight's meeting begins with receipt of the 2024 to 2027 City Services Budget Report, followed by the start of the budget worksheet for City Services. On January 15th, the committee will begin, the meeting will begin with a presentation on the results of the public engagement campaign before continuing with the budget worksheet. The worksheet will continue on January the 27th if needed for City Services, and the local boards will be presenting to the committee on January the 22nd. Recommendations of the Estimates Committee will be presented to City Council at its regular meeting on January the 30th. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no registered delegations for tonight's meeting, so we'll now move on to items for consideration. And I have a mover and a seconder to put item 4.1 on the floor, please. Councilor McCurry, Councilor Sluss. Okay. So 4.1 is the report from City Services budget be received. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Mayor Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a question through you to Joelle Daniels. And it has to do with the report that we're now considering, which was attached to the materials we received. And I'm interested in figure 3, the debt servicing. No, pardon me, figure 1, which is the average residential taxes population is greater than $100,000 for the year 2023. I wonder if we might be able to get that up on the screen. Yeah, it's figure 1. Clock's ticking. But there's unlimited speaking opportunities. Yeah. Well, one is trying to. No, it's the report. It's in the report 2024-13. It's figure 1, page 11 of 66. While you're trying to locate that, Joel, I have another question for you. And in the same report, I believe it's towards the end, it's page 19. And it talks about the tax ratio reduction policy for 2024. Am I correct that the budget you presented to us has the tax ratio reduction policy, that there is no tax reduction policy implemented for 2024?
Through Chair Martin to Mayor Davis, the figures I provided in the presentation are outside of ratio reduction policy. So that the $116.93 per year, $974 per month does not include any impact of the ratio reduction policy, which would be implemented unless council chose not to implement that for this year. For this year, the impact of ratio reduction is quite minimal. It's the shifting onto the average residential property is $11 for the year for implementing ratio reduction.
Okay, so back to, can we share figure 1? Yeah, there we go. All right, so this comes from what's called the BMA study. What is BMA?
I believe it's the initials of the two people that put together the study annually.
All
It's
right.
a municipal study. It's a municipal comparator study that looks at various tax bylaws, the provincial financial information returns that municipalities provide, and some other data mining sources to provide comparator data.
Right, and so this isn't prepared by the city of Brantford. This is prepared by an independent agency that looks at all the municipalities across Ontario.
There's about over 100 participating municipalities in the
Yeah,
study.
and Mr. Chair, the reason why I pulled this one out is because, you know, we often hear people will say, you know, Brantford has the highest taxes in Ontario, and this in fact tells us that last year that's not in fact true, and that in fact the average residential taxes for the city of Brantford are in fact at the lower end of the range and far below the average for municipalities across Ontario greater than $100,000. Yeah, just thought we should, that's quite relevant. And then Joelle, in respect to 9.7 of your report, strategic budget investments is, so we're going to be dealing with that as we deal with each of the various department budgets. Is that the intent?
There'll certainly be opportunity as we move through each of the department budgets to ask any questions on the strategic budget investments that have been included in those budgets. So it is quite transparent
Right.
included in the budget drivers on each departmental budget, what those are.
Right, and so 9.7 would list these would be hires beyond those that constitute the city workforce as it now is.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, okay. I assume I've hit 3.
You've exceeded your time. Thank you. Councillor McCreary.
It's very generous of you, Mr. Chairman, to let the mayor go beyond his time. Thank you, Joelle, for the presentation, and this really is quite a document. Could you tell me for this budget, what our actual assessment growth is?
Through the chair to Councillor McCreary is almost 1.9%.
No, the dollar value.
Oh, I can get that. It's $3,466,929. That's total. We've only used proportionate share, the city's proportionate share in the city services portion of the budget.
So the 3.46 is our share.
So our share would be just a little over 2.3 million.
Okay. Now, I see we have a category called strategic budget initiatives. Was that formerly known as unmet needs?
For the most part, that is correct. So these are budget investments that we have included in the budget. So in developing a multi-year budget, it's very difficult to have all of these requests that we're not quite sure whether they're going to be approved or not. Senior leadership looked at everything that was proposed, ranked certain needs, identified the ones that were deemed to be most urgent, and we have included those in the multi-year
So
budget.
that's a fundamental difference in the 5-year budget, is that it's not based upon the previous year in its entirety with adding on things that staff feel are necessary. Those are already incorporated.
They are incorporated, yes.
Okay. And when do we receive police, health unit, library, and the rest of our folks?
The budget package for those entities will be released late next week, and they will be coming to present their budgets to the council on January the 22nd.
Okay. So the process also seems a little more convoluted than in past. So we're not necessarily arriving at a final vote on the budget. It simply will come to be.
Get that in fact is correct. Yes. So estimates process this month is to provide some feedback and recommendations to the mayor. Once the mayor's budget is released, that's when we get into really this new process where council will have opportunity to amend that budget. And until all the legislative steps in this new process are exhausted, at that point, the budget will just be deemed to be adopted.
But it's not the mayor's fault, to be clear. This cannot be blamed on the mayor. It's a work of all of us, right? He simply has superpowers.
This is part of the new strong mayor legislation that was extended to Brantford and some others.
And
in July.
lastly, was there a point in time when staff were provided with a budget target, as we've done in years past? Thou shalt not exceed 2.5 or 3.5.
No, there was no formal target established.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Joelle. Joelle, in figure 6, the how we compare to other municipalities who either their proposed or approved budgets. And we're at the low end of that. But is that the other participating municipalities here, is that including their outside agencies as well, or is that their internal city controlled budgets?
For most of what was in the report at the time it was prepared, which is in figure 6, most of these, except for perhaps Norfolk, were final all-inclusive budgets. So even some of the lower tiers, Oakville, Burlington, Milton, because Halton Region had also approved a budget, we did include them because it is all-inclusive. I updated this in the presentation that I just provided to give a few more that have come through since then, which I believe also included Thunder Bay at 5.5, which is just their portion, and London at 4.9, which it's unclear to me whether it includes their boards and agencies or not, but it does not include some of the potential budget enhancements they're looking for approval for.
Okay, so the chart is actual apple to apple comparison then?
Our 4.99 is really is our city services portion of the budget.
Right.
So it's likely to grow
Yes.
once we add on the local board
But
portion.
the other
So
folks have already added on their
that's
local
correct,
boards.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to clear that up. Then I didn't see one, but it would be useful to me and possibly to others. Is there a chart that can be created that would show us debt that's being retired during this 4-year span? Like we're taking on, I think, 200 and some million in debt over the course of this proposal. But what are we retiring during that same period?
Through the chair to Councillor Celeste, I believe the only debenture that is maturing during this 4-year period is the Bernida Phase 9 Industrial Park. Other than that, we don't have any more maturities until after this 4-year plan.
Okay, so there's very little coming off, but 200 and some going on. Is that, so our debt ratio is going to obviously go up during this period?
The debt ratio, yes, absolutely. We are planning for that. Now, there's always going to perhaps be opportunities for grants to fund some of this that we're not aware of yet. But at an upper limit, certainly we're going to increase getting close to the current council approved limit.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Joel, on page 2 of the report, it talks about the 4.99% budget increase after proportionate assessment growth. What does proportionate assessment growth mean?
Through the chair to Councillor Carpenter, we do try to apportion the assessment growth. We do recognize that it's not only the city services that are being impacted by growth, but the services of the boards as well that are impacted by growth. So instead of taking it all for ourselves to really make our budget look better, we do apportion it proportionately based on the share of the levy between the city and the boards.
Okay, that's good to hear. So it's right across, it's across all departments and boards. And when you talked about funding things from debenture, or sorry, from development charges, is that taken into consider the development charges that we're not able to collect because of provincial regulation changes?
Sorry, Councillor Carpenter, I'm having a bit of problem hearing you.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Okay, when you talked about the funding of the budgets, you talked about funding from debenture, or sorry, not from not debenture, sorry, from fees from development charges, sorry, the DCs. But the province has changed the DCs that we can collect, have they not? And what kind of impact does that have on our budget?
Right. So the service that was eliminated through the approval of Bill 23 was the housing DCs. So we're no longer collecting DCs to build our own new affordable housing projects. So there was a report that was just delivered to the Social Services Committee, I believe in December, which outlined a potential future financing plan to continue the work of the Mayor's Housing Partnership Task Force and meeting those targets. The remaining services are still being collected for. Bill 23 did put some, propose some reductions and exemptions that could impact on this budget. Not all of those have actually come to fruition yet. So we are still collecting some of those. Ultimately, in the future, there could be units that are proposed to be built in the city that could reduce our development charges. All of that will be taken into consideration again. 2025 capital budget is when we've got our updated development charges background study, and all of that will be taken into consideration at that time.
Oh, thank you, Joel, for that clarity. I think that's important to clarify that. I appreciate that, Brian. Thank you for the report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments on Mayor Davis?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report that Joelle has given us, contains a lot of information, some of it abbreviated because we had to keep the report relatively short. But I've got a question regarding Table 1, historical budget increases. It's under Section 9.2 of the report. That could be shared. I'd appreciate it. So I'm looking at the column that's in green. So my understanding is that this represents the portion of the budget that we levy on the property taxpayer that is controlled by city and city council. All right. And historically, over the last 4 years, the amount that's allocated towards the city and city services and programs has been well below the rate of inflation. And I think my question goes to Mr. Hutchings. How did we manage to achieve that?
Through a number of initiatives, Mr. Mayor, through Mr. Chair, through a lot of corporate reorganizations, through expense. We've had a number of reduced commissions from 5 commissions to 3, and also a number of expense reviews and operation reviews of various areas through looking at all our operations.
Yeah, for example, last year when inflation was running at almost 7%, the city portion of the budget was 1.75%. And yes, over the last 3-4 years, we've had a number of organizational changes driven in part to make the operation here more efficient. Are there any other potential operational efficiencies that we might consider?
Through Mr. Chair, not at this time. We do though plan, as was in Joel's presentation, that's a part of the multi-year process. We do plan on reviewing about 2 to 3 departments, operationally to find there is maybe some organization changes or expense reductions or opportunities for duplication of services with other departments. And that will happen. Use our time instead of all the time budgeting. We'll use our time looking at some operational reviews.
Yeah, and so that's the question I have. So Joelle, what can we expect in next year and the year after, given that we're doing a multi-year budget? What will the budget process look like?
Through the chair to Mayor Davis, we would expect a much abbreviated budget process. We would expect that as long as the budget that is coming forward is in line with what was approved through the multi-year budget or very close to that a reconfirmation of the budget as required under the act could probably happen in one night.
Right. And that does allow for more time to spend reviewing each department and programs and services. And what will that look like and what will that consist of?
Are you referring to the sort of those rotational service reviews to be
Yes.
undertaken by the finance
Yes.
committee? So that'll be an opportunity to really get more into the details of those budgets, the services that are provided, how those services are funded, to what degree they're funded through user rates, through taxes, through grants. It'll cover.
So that's where we'll be able to do like in-depth review of particular departments, far beyond what we're able to do in the sort of standard budgeting process.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mayor, you've exceeded your time.
Thank you.
Councillor Sluss.
Just, I forgot to ask, well, the first time round, the average assessed value, I think was 280 some thousand you had indicated. Do we know the assessed values, the average in the other comparators? Like, are we extremely low? Or are we in the middle or are we high?
Well, I think traditionally, Brantford has sort of been a lower assessment value community. I'm just going to look at Pat and make sure he's agreeing with what I'm saying, which I see him nodding. So,
Okay.
yeah, certainly, an average home here is valued at 285,000, but perhaps in Guelph it's 385,000.
Okay, that would tend to help us then with our tax rate if it's a multiple. That's helping us keep taxes down, would that not?
This is why when it comes to property taxes, we really recommend that if we're going to compare with other municipalities, that we compare just relative taxes, which is what we've done on table 1, which says an average house in Brantford pays X, an average house in Guelph or London pays X for the same services that a single tier municipality would be receiving, because the tax calculation has 2 components: assessment, tax rate. So
Yes.
if you're in a higher assessment municipality, your tax rate is likely lower for the average home to generate the same amount of tax revenue.
Right, so we're actually comparing houses that look very similar, but they have different values because of where they are.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair Martin. Through you to staff, do we know when, or have we heard any rumblings on when the province was going to be doing another province-wide assessment?
Through you, Chair Martin, that we have not had any formal confirmation yet of the province undertaking a province-wide reassessment or when that's going to happen. I think we would expect, they want to undertake a bit of a policy review of their own. I really think my own feeling is we wouldn't see that any earlier than 2025.
Okay, yeah, because I just have some concerns. We all know that the property values and property assessments are going to be massively different than they were in 2016. So these numbers we're playing with are obviously going to be a lot larger once those changes take effect. Thank you.
Councillor McCreary.
Chair, thank you very much. With respect to the comparators again, Joelle, these are all single tier municipalities. Sorry, some of them are not single tier municipalities. Does that include the regional taxes as well as the municipal taxes in places like Waterloo?
Which table are you referring to, Councillor
Uh,
Curry? Sorry.
Average
Average-
residential taxes.
That's the municipal. So there's no region on here. So if it shows Waterloo, it's the city and the region.
So it includes. the
total
region.
tax bill
Yes,
for a
thank you.
home in
I thought
Waterloo.
so, but I just wanted to be clear on that. Now, with respect to local boards, did we give any direction to them, even though we didn't give direction to ourselves, to limit their growth, in budget?
No, there was no targets provided to the boards.
Okay. And to be clear, so we've got health unit, we've got police, library, John Noble. Am I missing any?
The BIA will also be here, but there's no impact on the tax levy for the BIA. And then also included in that budget, that won't be debated at that time, but would be included in there is the paramedic services.
Right, yeah, we've already dealt with that. But we have council representation on all those committees. So remind me in past, have we given direction to our council reps to participate in the budgets and to try and limit the growth of budgets by our partner agencies?
There's certainly been no formal direction provided by city staff to how the boards want to go ahead and prepare their budgets and who's involved in that process.
Mhm.
I believe in prior years, there has been some recommendations requesting boards to maintain a certain target, but that's certainly
Sure.
up to them whether they wish to do that or not.
Are those folks on board with the 5-year budget plan?
I believe all the agencies, with the exception of the BIA, has provided a multi-year budget.
Okay, good show, thank you.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Joel, I just want to sort of correct something and the question is, does this make sense? When we talk about assessment growth, for example, or not assessment growth, but reassessment. So we haven't been assessed since 2016. The average property is 285,000. The problem is it not correct? The problem is people look at tax rates, and the tax assessment is basically the value of your home, the times the tax rate, to give us a value for taxes. But if the actual value of the home goes up through reassessment, it's not a big hit to everybody because their property values went up to the actual value it is, because the tax rate drops accordingly based upon what the actual budget is. Is that a fair statement?
Through the chair, I think it would be fair to say that through a reassessment, if every single property increased by the same proportionate amount, there'd be no impact on the taxes.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to clarify. I didn't want people to think that all of a sudden the reassessment would mean that their taxes are going up dramatically. I just want to make that clear. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And further to that, when there is a reassessment like that, it's a matter of whether your assessment goes up more than the average or less than the average. So if your assessment goes up more than the average, you'll see a tax increase. And if it goes up less than the average, you won't see as big an increase. That'd be.
Yes, that is correct. And what also is in there is how the assessed values in the various classes fall out as well, because that could result in shifting, say between industrial and the other classes or commercial and the other classes if there's a big swing.
Okay, thank you. Okay, having no more speakers in the queue, any raised hands? No, we'll call the vote on 4.1.
For members of council, just a reminder that we're using the estimates committee meeting in eScribe for January 27th for the vote tonight.
I have that up, nothing's showing up.
Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Ventelberg, we're missing your votes.
I have nothing showing up on my screen at all. No bar or nothing, so, but my vote is yes.
Is your e-scribe in the January 27th meeting, Counselor? That's where it should show up.
That
Councillor
could be the
Sullivan?
issue.
Councillor Sullivan, if I can get your vote, please.
I already voted yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
The 2024-2027 City Services Budget Report carries on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sullivan, Caputo, Sles, Martin, McCreary, Carpenter, Hunt, Samuel, Ventelberg.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 4.2. This is the 2024 to 2027 budget worksheet. As a reminder, no vote will be taken on this opening motion, as amendments will be made throughout the entire Estimates Committee budget process, with the final vote occurring at the last Estimates Committee meeting to approve the budget recommendation. Further, members may speak up to 3 minutes per amendment with an unlimited number of speaking opportunities. Can I have a mover and a seconder to put item 4.2 on the table, please? Councillor Caputo, Councillor Samwell. With that. Okay, we need the motion read, please. Councillor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Samwell, that staff prepared 2024-2027 operating and capital budgets be received, and that upon adoption of the 2024-2027 operating and capital budgets, the following actions be approved. That the necessary bylaws presented to City Council for adoption, and that the commissioners and the purchasing officer be authorized to award year 2024 projects in accordance with the City of Brantford's purchasing policy.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the first step of the worksheet, step 1B, starting point budget overview and worksheet introduction.
Sorry about that. So just 1B, it really just provides an overview of what the starting point is, which is just what was in the presentation that we heard. So for the city services budget impact after assessment growth, 4.99%, average residential tax impact of $116.83, and a monthly impact of $9.74. The 2024 capital budget for city services only is $138,131,076.
Are there any questions regarding step 1B? Seeing none, we'll move on to step 2. Provides a summary of the budget of the Chief Administrative Officer. Mr. Hutchings, did you want to do an overview first, or, okay, are there any departmental budgets from steps 2B1 to 2B2 that members wish to separate for discussion purposes? Councillor McCurry.
Just a very simple question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Hutchings, have you transferred folks from CAO, Government Relations and Corporate Initiatives, and Communications, Community Engagement and Customer Services, and that why you have a savings in one and a big number in the other?
No, I haven't. Through Mr. Chair, no, I haven't. The FTEs are the same. Where the large savings is coming from is through a bit of a reorganization that was done, approved last year in May and by council. Is not only am I the CAO, I'm also the acting commissioner of Community Service and Social Development. So a lot of my salaries and my support staff salaries in the CEO and Government Relations and Community Initiatives area is allocated a cost proportion to the county as part of the share of the cost sharing between the two organizations.
We still come out ahead in that deal, right?
I think both parties gets a good benefit and value from the arrangement we have with the county and the city.
You are more political than I, thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Hutchings? I had one, the Indigenous Relations, does that represent the salary of the person that fills that role?
Yes, it does.
Is that position currently filled or vacant?
It's vacant at the moment, Mr. Chair.
So if we were to cut that, there'd be no real impact on any city staff?
It would have not had impact on the city staff. We've had a hard time filling that position. It was vacated last year. We've had a hard time filling that position and, but the position's still there and we're going to review and try to post it again early this year in January, February.
Okay. With that, the chair will entertain a motion to remove this position, moved by Councillor McCurry. Do we get a seconder? Councillor Sless. And just speaking of this, that the last individual really was a lobbyist for the Aboriginal community. That's not a position that we should be paying for. That's something that if they want to lobby us, that they should be hiring somebody to do that work. So I think it was a mistake creating this position in the first place. And with any luck here, we can remove this position, save ourselves some money and some grief, and save the time of trying to find a replacement for the person that left. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Hutchings. I'm inclined to agree with the chairman. I'd like to hear your perspective on it.
I think it's the position, it's a very difficult position to fill to rep, we're our next door neighbors. I don't need to tell everybody this in council are Six Nations of the Grand River, and as well as we're in the work with Mississaugas of the credits. So it's an important position to have a liaison position, but it's very difficult to find a person to fill that gap can fill that neutral gap and represent us at that position. So I think it's important to the city, but it is a very difficult position to fill to find a person like that.
Thank you.
Councillor McCurry.
We've had this position on the books for a number of years, and I think it was originally brought as a resolution by perhaps Councillor Wall. And at the time, the landscape was somewhat different here, and it showed promise. But as it turns out, I think our experience has been that for the tenure that we've had this on the books, I don't know that it's really added any value to the corporation. So I think I'm supportive of this tonight, and you know, there may come a time when we have an opportunity to revisit this, and perhaps we have a candidate who will be head and shoulders, and we can come back another day. But I think given the fact that we started out at almost 7%, we're at 4.99%. If we can save $1 or $2, I think it's advisable to do that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Scully.
Thank you. I think the role is very important. But my interpretation of individuals who tried to fill the role was that there was a lot of conflict there between representing the city and representing their heritage and their culture. So my question is to CAO Hutchings, do we need to reevaluate what the role is and what the expectation is of who's to fill the role? And secondary to that is, do we have someone here on staff that you think could fill those shoes and provide that service to us?
Through Mr. Chair, it's a good question. I really do believe that the scope for the position was really too wide. It was from anywhere from, you know, working, negotiating to really what we really need is somebody to look at our policy and procedures and our recruiting practices and things like that. Start small and work their way up. It was pretty broad based originally. And so the second question is, there is nobody on staff at this point in time that could fill this arrangement. If we were to make any sort of change to this, to maybe the direction you're going, Councillor, is you may want to make it more broad, make it which the police have just hired. And we're meeting with that person this week, who's more of a diversity and inclusion person rather than just specifically to Indigenous issues.
How'd you read my mind? So for that reason, because I do think that the DEI aspect of this would encompass this role. I'm going to support removing this from the budget, not because I don't think it's an important item, but because I think having it so specific created a lot of conflict for any individual that wanted to fill that role. And by conflict, I mean a conflict between representing the city of Brantford, but also not wanting to be seen, for lack of a better term, as a sellout to the community that they hold so near and dear to their heart. So I do think this role could be a little more broad and cover a little bit more. So for those reasons only, I'll be supporting removing this from the budget so that we can reevaluate it as a different position.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you to the CAO, how many man hours since this individual has resigned or left the company has the city put into trying to find a replacement? And how many hours do you suspect it's going to take to find another replacement? I think that people need to understand how long and how much resources go into trying to replace these type of people.
I don't know the exact, so if I can through Mr. Chair, I don't know the exact person hours, but I do will say that it's extensive. We did a recruitment, posted for a month. HR was involved. We had a number of candidates, about 8 candidates apply. We interviewed about 4 or 5 of them and we thought one was acceptable and we made a job offer and they didn't accept it. So we didn't feel any other candidates were suitable. That was in October timeframe. And so we decided to pause and maybe try it in the new year around this time. But as people will remember, in council, you weren't on council at that time, but it was difficult the first round to find somebody as well. We went to 2 or 3 stages of interviews and things like that. So it's a very difficult position to fill. It does take a lot of hours to do that.
So to reiterate what Councillor Sicoli said, to make the talent pool wider and deeper, we need to make some changes if we're going to go forward. Thank you.
Okay. Counselor Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'm in agreement with everything that's been said, but not sure whether or not do we look at an amendment or a deferral that we revisit this particular function at a later date if needed. Just looking at the proper process to it. Okay. Then can we put something through as an amendment to accept it as status quo as we're agreeing to today, but with a position to revisit as needed?
What's on the floor right now is to remove this position from the budget. Now, if you want to delay that or refer that, a referral or a deferral is always in order.
Let's defer it. I'll put an amendment in to defer it if that's possible. For 2025.
Is there a seconder for? Well, until it's on the floor, we really can't discuss it. It's lost for lack of a seconder. Did you have anything else, Councillor Caputo? Okay, Councillor Van Tilburg.
Yeah, it's a very difficult position, and sometimes we can also be very difficult. The position, what year was that created? If I could get that information, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was 2020, Councillor Van Tilburg.
Was that late 2020 or was that early 2020?
It was late 2020.
Anything possibly going on around that time that we thought that this position might be necessary and quite difficult? Possibly conflicting native issues on city property, anything like that at that time?
We had an occupation at that time, yes.
All right. So what, I guess my question here, because I do support this position, but what I do understand is the difficulty behind it. And rewriting the parameters, I'm more or less more concerned about what other people's concepts are and what the new diversity inclusion person is going to be versus what I thought the parameters were, and maybe we need to tighten them up. Because I believe that this position, regardless of it not being filled right now, I believe when it's filled, it's very important for many different reasons. If this were to come back in another form, how would we accomplish that outside of a budget process? Would we have to wait an entire year? I guess that's the question I'm getting at.
So if I think what you're asking, if this, I also want to, before I answer your question, Counselor, I want to make something very clear to council though. Because this position is no longer in the budget, it doesn't mean that we're not continuing relations with Six Nations. I spent a lot of time on, and so do our staff, with Six Nations and a lot of issues. So I want to make sure that very clear. Doesn't mean that we don't have this position. There's no relationship with Six Nations. But back to your question, if this position were eliminated, say the budget, it would be out of the budget. We would have to then either internally, like, because it's a multi-year budget, try to find savings to either create a diversity and equity inclusion person or another one of these positions, an Indigenous Affairs advisor, through either savings internally through operational savings or elimination of another position. Internally, that's how we do it. We're doing things
Okay.
for net zero. Yep.
Yes, thank you. That you've answered my question because I was thinking about that diversity position as well. So it'd be the same process regardless. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Mr. Hutchings. So is the $100,000 is in the budget, as you say, but is it not in the gapping, or we've used the gapping because we haven't funded it and we haven't had a position there? So are we receiving that savings already in the gapping annually?
It is in the, and I just want to correct something. My friend here told me the position was October 21 that was created. But to your question, short answer is yes, Councilor Carpenter, this would be in gapping in the last 6 months or so because of the salaries not being paid.
So we're already saving the $100,000. This doesn't reduce the actual net to the taxpayer, does it?
If we eliminate it, it would save the, it would come off the budget, yes.
It'd come off the budget, but it's already coming back to us. It's on the budget, but it comes back to us in gapping anyways.
Comes
As a
back to us
reduction.
in 2023 through gapping, through year-end surplus or
Yeah.
deficit. And then in 2024, it would come off the, if it were eliminated, it would come off the levy amounts, and it would be that much less levy to the taxpayer.
Okay, and through to what Councilor Caputo was trying to bring forward was a way to sort of keep the idea or the concept on the book somehow. The resolution is to eliminate it, but the amendment may have not have been to not to defer it, but maybe to add an amendment that we revisit the concept for 2025 might have been more appropriate as amendment to this resolution, I think, to get where Councilor Caputo was trying to go. To defer it would mean we wouldn't have made a decision on it until 2025. Would that be correct?
Short answer is yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's a procedural question. I'm looking at the chair, but yes, the short answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And just to clarify that if we don't remove this position and someone is hired to fill this position, then that's an expense to the city. Whereas if we remove it, that's an ongoing savings, not only for 2024, but 25, 26, 27, unless we've come up with a different definition for this position that's more of a inclusiveness kind of position. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to repeat what Mr. Hutchings said in respect to the issue of Indigenous relations, and certainly at the staff level with the staff of the elected council. There is an ongoing process to improve the consultation process. It occurs regularly, and it's been occurring over the last 2 to 3 years, and in the process where our senior staff interact regularly on a monthly basis with senior staff from Six Nations elected. And it is a process that is continually being improved, and it's a major focus of both myself and certainly senior staff to improve the relationship with Six Nations. And for me personally as well, and with former Chief Mark Hill, met with him regularly and have met with the new chief, Sherry Lynn Hill. And I know that there's a desire in the part, I can't speak on behalf of the elected council, new elected council, but I know there's a desire to improve the relationship at the council elected level. And I'm looking forward to, I believe, certain initiatives that we hope will be brought forward through this year that will improve the relationship between and the contact between the elected councils, including the County of Brant, hopefully. So far as this position, the original concept was to have someone that would certainly allow us to improve some of the cultural events that take place in our city. So there's a greater Indigenous component. And the individual that we had spent a lot of his time working with BRISC, which is the Brantford Regional Indigenous Support Center, which runs a number of various cultural events intended to create a greater degree of awareness, acceptance, and understanding between City of Brantford, our community, and the Indigenous community, since we do have a very large Indigenous community here in town, probably in excess of 10% of our population. And there were some very worthwhile initiatives that that he was working on to improve that relationship. And unfortunately, it's not continued to the same degree. So that's certainly what we're missing. Plus, he was to review the policies and procedures we have internally to make sure that we're a welcoming, inclusive organization and workforce, not only for those that are Indigenous, but from other backgrounds. And, you know, we are going to miss some of that. But my perspective was that it really was not a full-time position and probably a half-time position. I know that the CAO has considered that this position, if it's included going forward, would not just be confined solely to Indigenous relations, but would be more encompassing of a diversity inclusivity initiative. So I'm reluctant to see it being pulled out of the budget for that reason. I'm hoping that the CEO can come back to us later in this process to better define this role that might make it more acceptable. Because of course, we know that this is a difficult budget year. It's a difficult year for many in our community that are facing their own family budgets being torn asunder by the inflation that's occurred over the last year and a half. And that's something we always must be mindful. So on the one hand, I can understand we're trying to find savings. This is a position that hasn't been filled now for almost a year. So it does seem like it's logical that we consider whether there is value to this going forward. But I think there is, if it's a better defined job description and role for this person, because as it was described, certainly I don't think justified a full-time position. So I'll vote in favor of this, but on the understanding that the CAO can come back to us with a better description, a better vision for this position and what it might do for the city and in particular the city organization.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further speakers, we'll call the vote on the amendment. Who are you waiting for?
We're still waiting for Councillor Hunt and Carpenter vote.
I haven't received a request for vote. I see vote in progress, but I haven't received a request for vote. It didn't come to me.
If you touch the vote for progress, it'll call up the opportunity to vote. Or you can just tell us your vote.
It does not come up. My vote is no, but it does not come up, and I am on January 27th where I'm supposed to be.
Okay.
The amendment carries on a recorded vote of 6-5. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sicoli, Caputo, Celeste, Martin, McCreary. Those voting in the negative, Sullivan, Carpenter, Hunt, Samuel, Ventelberg.
Are there any other amendments to the CAO section? We'll move to step 3 then, provides a summary budget for the fire operating and capital budgets. Does anyone have anything they wish separated for fire? I had a couple of questions. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, go ahead. I didn't.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for the chief. Last year, we made a decision to fully staff, I believe it was the ladder truck, so that it could be a first responding vehicle. So my question, Mr. Chair, to the chief is, so have the hires been completed for that position? Does your budget reflect over a full 12-month budget period, the cost of fully staffing the ladder truck?
Through the chair, Fire Chief Todd Binkley. Yes, the budget is reflective of a fully staffed aerial truck running out of the station number 1.
Sure, that's my question.
Councilor McCreary.
Sure, thank you. Welcome, guys. Could you elaborate a bit with respect to what your budgeted amounts are for overtime for the coming year?
Through the chair, our budgeted amounts for 2024 for overtime are approximately 400,000 in fire suppression and fire communications.
Is there a methodology by which you could reduce that number, Chief?
Through the chair, if council remembers, they supported a report that came forward in October that supported maintaining our active firefighting force and active communication staffing. That will reduce overtime from what it was this year. However, it won't totally eliminate overtime, so that the budgeted amounts are reflective of what's the methods that staff have taken to try to reduce to maintain that number.
Now, can you remind me if there is a cap on your total staffing level?
Through the chair, do you mean cap on how many we hire, or are you referring to minimum staffing?
The total complement within the department, is there a cap on the total in suppression, for instance?
Through the chair, yes, we have a active number that council has set.
Okay. Would a variance in that amount help to reduce your overtime requirements?
Through the chair, reducing the amount of firefighters would actually work the other way and would increase overtime.
No, that wasn't my question. If we were to, if you were to increase your complement, total amount of guys and ladies that are working for you in suppression, for instance, would that allow you to reduce your total costs by reducing overtime?
Through the chair, yes, it would.
Perhaps you could make a suggestion to us about what that would look like at a later date?
Through the chair, yes, we can provide a memo to the fact of what that would look like.
And it would be good if we could have it before we conclude deliberations. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Councilor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the fire chief, we have a full complement now?
Through the chair, as supported by council, we have hired some additional personnel that have brought up our numbers close to our full-time complement. However, there are some parameters on the report there, so there's a couple individuals still off that have to reach that threshold that council has supported us hiring.
Now, are you having difficulty getting firefighters through the training process and eligible to be first-class firefighters?
Through the chair, no, we're not. No, we aren't.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I had, before I go to second time speakers, there's a big increase in communications. What's the reason for that?
Through the chair, the increase in communication is reflective of wages and benefits, including council supported, maintaining our active strength. It's also an increase in, a slight increase in overtime, as well as the contractual increases in software and hardware licensing that is necessary to support our communication division.
Okay, and there's a line for non-active employees. Is that firefighters who are on WSIB?
Through the chair, that is correct.
And I'm assuming you're actively working to get them back to work where possible?
Through the chair, yes, we have a proactive approach.
Wonderful, thank you. Councilor McCurry.
That was my question, Chair.
Okay. So that finishes step 3B1. Oh, Councilor Carpenter.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I missed the question there. To the chief, the traffic light preemption, is that ongoing? When have we not got all the traffic lights done? Is there still more to be done here? Because we budgeted $300,000 in each year in the next 3 years.
Through the chair, the current preemption system has reached its end of life. It's a necessary part for firefighter travel and also assists us with maintaining the council set fire response targets. So it is to replace it with new updated technology over a 5-year period.
So every 5 years, we got to replace this equipment?
Through the chair, the original capital project was a phased-in approach to do all the necessary traffic lights in the city. This is another phased approach to replace all those lights in the city.
And we do that every 5 years, start that recycle over again? Like, did they last 5 years, or does the new equipment last longer than 5 years?
Through the chair, the previous project lasted longer than 5 years.
Okay, and how long is the new equipment expected to last? Do we have a date for that?
Through the chair, we don't have that information.
Okay, well, you can get that to us. Thank you.
Chief, how many years ago was that project started? Best guess.
Through the chair, I'm gonna guess 2011, 2012, I think was the original.
Okay, so the original system lasted a lot longer than 5 years.
Through
Okay,
the chair, that's correct.
okay,
There's no volume.
we have an IT issue?
Good now.
Okay, I think we're back on, so do any members wish to separate any projects from steps 3D1 to 3D18 for discussion purposes? That'd be the capital portion, I'm assuming. Seeing no request for separations. I apologized in step 2, I skipped over C and D, so we'll go back to step 2C1 to step 2C2. Are there any items to be separated in that section?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yep, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, just confirm, so I got two different worksheets here. Which departments are we dealing with right now?
Well, step 2 was the CAO's
Yeah.
section.
So we've moved beyond that, though.
Well, I skipped over the subsequent years and also the capital portion.
Right,
So
okay,
we've gone back to the CAOs to cover off the areas that I skipped over.
yep, gotcha.
Counselor Hunt.
Through you, I'm looking at, so 2D2, the CRM replacement, $1.5 million next year. Is that our customer service system?
Yes, it is, and I'll ask Maria Vasaki and Scott Hall to come up and explain if you have any further questions about that. That is our customer relationship management system. That's what CRM, the acronym for CRM stands for. Not sure if you have another question, Counselor, or that's what it's for, though.
I think I understand that. I'm gonna put my plug in for a council CRM system that we do not have. And whose budget does that show up in or should show up in?
Through the chair, to Councillor Hunt, Maria Vasaki, Director of Communications, Community Engagement and Customer Service. Councillor Hunt, should this budget get approved, the type of software that we're looking at would have the capacity to have councillors access it and be able to see cases in real time. Not only councillors, but also members of the public would be able to access the cases that they've reported to the city through this new system. The system we have right now is about 10 years old and is reaching its end of life. We're just basically hanging on through the expertise of our IT team who keeps it running for us day in and day out. But we do need to ensure that we have new technology in place sooner than later, because it is going to just basically quit on us, which would make our customer service representatives blind when they're looking at our knowledge base and not able to access information to answer questions from the members of the community who are calling us. We get up to 500 calls a day. So the software is critically important to be working. The reason why we need a new CRM system so desperately is because in the last 10 years since the first one was launched, a lot of new systems have come on board across several different departments. For example, Amanda has advanced. We have Cartograph now. We have Cloud Permit now for planning. What a new CRM system will be able to do is integrate all of those systems. And instead of looking at 12 screens, customer service representatives can look at 1 or 2. And I can't tell you what that would make a difference in terms of being able to be more responsive to our customers.
And I just a question on the data migration. So we're going to be able to take everything in the old system and migrate it into the new system. So there's not going to be any loss of data. So the migration will work with the new system that we're planning.
Very good question. Through the chair, it will definitely be a transition. It will have to be planned. It's a huge project. It's a huge undertaking. It is a main initiative that we highlighted in the customer service strategy that council approved in April of 2023. We can't get to where we need to be to service a population of 100,000 plus people without this type of equipment and these tools in place. So it will take at least a year to implement this. And in that planning, we would transition the data that's in our current system into a new system. There are project managers that are assigned as part of the process from the vendor as well as internally. We've already started thinking about what that timeline and plan looks like.
Seeing no further requests for sections 2C and 2D, we'll move on to section 4. Summary budget of the executive and legislative 2024 operating budget. So 2B1 and 2B2 are open for questions. sorry, 4B1,
4B,
4B2.
yeah.
Counselor Carpenter.
Thank you. I was waiting. You threw me off there. I was ready to go. Thank you. Just maybe to our CAO, this is talking about the executive legislative operating budgets, both mayor and members of council. But for members of council, many years ago, we used to have a clerk in the council budget. It was the clerk that was responsible to council and council needs via resolutions, amendments, those kinds of things. Is there any opportunity to move that back? Either do we move someone from the clerk's department over to a council budget? Because as I see it, the way it happened in the past is because it wasn't actually attached to a council budget, council services, we got lost in the shuffle and the needs of the work of the clerk's department. That's my question.
At this point in time, Council, that position does not exist, as you mentioned. We have been talking internally about doing some shuffling to supports. As Maria mentioned, the customer service strategy, which came forth in April, and the software is part of it, but also that position is really key to that customer service strategy as well. So there has been some talks about some reallocating some internal resources without adding to the budget to try to fill that position to support council. That we haven't landed that yet, but there has been some discussions on that to try to make that happen in 2024.
Yeah, the logic being is that rather than council members sending emails to different department heads or different departments looking for issues to be resolved, we could deal that directly with one individual, and that would go, it would save a lot of email and a lot of work from all the departments, and collectively it would be more efficient. Is that the intent?
Exactly the intent, Counselor. There's other like positions. I know the city of Guelph has like position reports in the CAO's office, and it's exactly what you're saying, rather than all the directors are not sure where things go, what direction they go. This was basically a customer service person and logs into the system and tracks it for both you and the citizen, but also for the director as well that you may be talking to. And it does give them feedback and expedites things quicker for counselors.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchings. I appreciate that. And I know you understand that. I would just encourage that when that shift happens, that it happens in the budget documents as well, so that we don't lose it in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. And so through you to Brian, I guess, the CRM system that I was interested in. So I was very surprised when I started that you got handed your laptop, your iPad, and your phone, and there were no tools in place to track your constituent work. So I'm not necessarily talking about what would be a customer service complaint, but tracking interactions, projects that you've worked on, that kind of thing. And that requires, again, I'm very familiar with CRM systems, having used them in business for a number of years, and was somewhat surprised that we didn't have any such tool that was available for counselors to be able to do that. So have had some discussions, and I want to thank Maria and her team for the discussions that we did have earlier this year. And I do welcome the ability to go in and look at potentially a constituent matter that's come in through our customer service department, but that's not a CRM system for counselors to have a specific contact record that we can track interactions, whether it be planning and development applications, any kind of meetings that we've had. Those types of things cannot be tracked for counselors to be able to manage their contact relationship management software. So the question is, whose budget would we slide such a CRM system into?
This, through you, Mr. Chair, this would be the budget, the executive and legislative operating budget. Specifically, it sounds like you're talking specifically to council, but a CRM with managing, instead of sales, but managing residents and their connections, and as well as all that sort of stuff. It sounds like it might be a little different scope than what Director Vasaki was talking about. It would be in this budget, in the Executive Legislative Services. We have not budgeted for that, to be clear, but it'd be in this budget.
Yeah, the process to budget it.
The process, so the second question is, I missed that. I apologize, Councillor Hunt. The process to budget would be really, I guess, IT working with, clerk's office, trying to scope this out, see what sort of extent and see what sort of packs are out there and figure what estimate would be in there, coming back in, to put this in your budget.
Okay.
Having done some research, we would, is it possible for us to put an amendment that scoping be put in before this budget's fully adopted?
Not sure if the question was picked up on the phone. The question is that, can the amendment go in to put this in the budget, once we complete the scoping? It's a clerk, my answer would be, one would be yes, but,
Yeah, an amendment can be put forward towards that, but I will defer to Joel for any financial.
yes.
Yeah, certainly. There can be an amendment made. Staff can start doing the research. If we're able to come back prior to the February process, we can certainly include that in the budget. If that's something that's going to take a bit more time to scope out, there's no reason we couldn't still take that direction and come back outside of the budget process with perhaps a funding source to add that to the capital program.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McCurry.
Chair, thank you. Members of council do have individual budgets which they can use at their discretion, year by year. I don't know that we need to do that this year in this budget. There's a lot of off-the-shelf things that individual councillors can participate in. I know quite a few councillors do employ off-the-shelf or self-invented methods. And I'm not sure that everybody would sign on to use whatever standard there would be. So perhaps staff could take it under advisement to offer alternatives. And if the cost of such endeavors is more than councillors have budgeted for, then that would require an increase for next year, perhaps. Next year meaning 25.
Anything else for 4B1 or 2? Seeing none, for C1 and 2, the future years operating budgets. Seeing none, there's no capital for this section, so move on to step 5. Corporate services operating capital budget. Do any members wish to separate any department budget steps from 5B1 to 5B6? Is the food here? Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so we're gonna take a recess for half an hour to eat, and we'll be back at 6:30. Thank you. While people are checking, I had a question from legal services. You just switch sheets here. There's a line item that says transfer to red light program. 124% increase. Can we get an explanation as to what that is all about?
Through the chair, my name is Jason Carrier, Manager of Court Administration. So with regards to the transfer to the red light camera program, This is the red light camera initiative that has been started in the Provincial Offenses Office this year. And these are the monies that are being transferred to the red light, the Vision Zero program and the transfer area there.
I thought this program was supposed to be self-funding. Why is there a huge budget increase there?
Through the chair, this transfer is monies that are the net proceeds out of the funds that are received through the various prosecutions of those red light camera tickets. So the transfer that is set out in the budget is actually the net revenues that are received from the program that go into that reserve. And so it is all of the revenues that are, all of the expenses that are associated with those tickets are taken off first. And this is the profits effectively that are from the after all of the expenses are taken off that are transferred into that reserve.
Yeah, except this shows it as an expense, not a profit.
Correct. It shows that as an expense through the legal services budget because it is an expense to us. It is an amount that is taken away from the legal services budget. But ultimately, it is a good news story. It is money that is going in as the transfer to the reserve to be used by that Vision Zero Road Safety Initiatives program.
Where does the transfer in show up in the budget then?
This is an internal transfer, so the proceeds from the POA budget go into Public Works, into the operational services budget. Then they pay for some of the costs for the operational costs of the cameras. And then everything that's left over, that transfer to the red light camera reserve is actually in Public Works. So this exact transfer that's coming out of POA is coming into the operational services budget in Public Works.
Is it an exact same amount or is it slightly different?
No, it's the exact same amount.
So this is strictly an in and out. Okay, thank you. Councillor Slass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I neglected and I didn't realize I have a daughter-in-law who works in POA, so I'll be declaring a conflict of interest on this.
Thank you. Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. I didn't really have a question till you raised it, Mr. Chairman, but so to staff, this money that gets transferred over from the in and out, does it stay within, does the engineering department have flexibility in what they use these funds for? Are they directed to further traffic?
Through the chair, the money that is given over through to the Vision Zero Reserve Fund is to be used exclusively for road safety initiatives as per the resolution of council.
Okay, so it all stays in Road Vision Zero. Okay, thank you. That's what I want to know. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other, Councillor McCurry?
Chair, thank you. So are we talking about the 5B2 legal services budget? Is that what is being referenced, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, 5B1 through to 5B6, so 5B2 falls within that.
But with respect to the red light transfer to reserve, is that 5B2?
Yes, it is.
So that accounts for the 22.19% in its entirety? Or
no, I believe it's a portion of that.
Do we know what the portion is?
So the overall increase is almost $300,000. The red light camera transfer increase is $314,000.
Okay. And if we go right to the bottom of that 5B6, the corporate services admin is that amount?
Through the chair, sorry, what was the question?
Corporate services admin,
Yes.
5B6.
Yes. What is it?
Yes.
So this is my office. So this is a new position that was that came about through the reorg report that Brian spoke to earlier. So while my corporate services budget is now seeing a big increase, there were decreases throughout the organization through other budgets that reorganization net to zero.
Okay. Is that something that we saw earlier this year in a report?
That was earlier in spring of 2023.
Yeah, okay, all right. Thank you. That's my question.
Okay, IT services has a 16% plus increase. Can we get an explanation as to why that is so high, please?
Scott Hall, Director of IT Services, through the chair to the chair. That increase is due 575,000 of that, so about 57% of that account is from operating impact from previous council initiatives. Those initiatives last year allowed us to replace our backup system. It allowed us to implement a managed service. It allowed us to get a new ticketing system, and the other part was for disaster recovery. The other parts of that are our wages and benefits, the approved manager of security, information security position, and then communication lines of services to upgrade for our telephony system, our UC system.
Okay, thank you. Seeing nothing further for, Mayor Davis.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, on the IT budget. So the council approved initiatives that the manager of information security and analyst. So that came out of the previous discussion that took place before Christmas.
That's correct.
Right. But strategic budget investments, network architect, technical engineer. So those are different then.
Those are different positions as recommended staff complement to IT services that in this budget would show impacting in 2025 and 2026.
Right. But not in 2024.
No, that's only the manager of information security.
All right. And so what's the justification for these two positions?
The justification, so for the network architect, currently, if you look at our IT services and on our current IT complement on the network side, it would show that we have 3 network architects. The reality is from one of those network architects is dedicated to telephony or the phone system only. The other is a position 100% funded by water, wastewater. And so that individual actually works full-time working on water, wastewater initiatives, so really isn't available to work on city initiatives. So as I said, we only have one. So as we work towards resiliency and redundancy, we need another individual to provide that backup for that individual. With the implementation of the DAP project, we were able to bring on a network architect. When that project finished with our assistance from water, wastewater, we were able to extend that position for 6 months. During that time, we've been able to stay ahead of all of our tickets, our projects, and not falling behind like we were seeing prior to having that resource. As a complement of IT services. So it's really there to support current activities and to support our capital program and all the replacement of network switches, access points, firewalls, et cetera, et cetera. The technical engineer, the same thing. It's there to support the tickets, all the day-to-day activities for changes that come through. And we just, with everything else going on over the past years and what we have on our plate with regards to the security roadmap, we just need the resources to help assist the manager of security that's coming on board to get that work done.
All right, but you're proposing to do that in 2026. So if there's a need, why is it waiting until 2026?
Okay.
Through the chair to Mayor Davis, I think you're going to see through all of these budgets that the response would be, we really need many of what we've requested through the multi-year budget now. But we do recognize it's not unrealistic and probably not palatable to have all of these positions added in year one. Through senior leadership exercise, we did review all the positions, we ranked them and brought them forward the best that we could in a manner through 4 years, the needs would be addressed.
All right, and if we're approving, well, if as a result of this whole process, we have a 4-year budget. So would something like this, higher in 2026, would that come forward in 2026 to be approved? Or if it's in this multi-year budget, it's sort of automatically approved, not subject to any further decision making?
Yes, correct. So it would be part of the multi-year budget. So barring any unforeseen items that come forward in the multi-year that would have a significant impact on what has been brought forward, this position would come through as part of the confirmation. Certainly through a 4-year process, there could be unforeseen items that come along. Perhaps to deal with that, we're going to have to look at reshuffling the deck if we needed to handle some of these unforeseen items. But this is the path forward that we're forecasting at this time.
Okay. If I may, Mr. Chair, on the same budget. So the end of service agreement with Grandbridge, those are IT services that previously the city was providing to the Grandbridge Energy Corporation.
Through the chair, that's correct.
All right. So given that we'll no longer be providing those services, and that takes place in this year, correct?
That ends November of this 2024. Yeah, this year.
All
Sorry.
right. So how does that then impact the department? Is there not less of a need for certain activities in the department?
Through the chair, the reality is we, as part of 2023 and 2022, we had already started Grandbridge migrating off of our services. So at the end of the day, we're providing very little support to a Grandbridge at any point in time. In fact, we're meeting next Monday to look at finalizing the final transition plan. So we're not really working on their infrastructure whatsoever.
Yeah, what I'm getting at though is that would have taken up certain resources in the department, and now they're no longer being called upon for the purposes of serving Grandbridge. What's happening now with those same resources?
Those same resources are working on other projects and initiatives within the department. They've been full speed ahead working on, like I said, the backup system, the managed service, the disaster recovery. They've been working on all that information, on all those systems, getting those prepared and ready to go, going live 365, all of those. So there's no expenditures there.
Get my 3 minutes.
Your time is up, Mr. Mayor. But there's no one else in the queue. If you have more questions, then
Yeah, I do. So I'm going to switch over to HR. I think I'm needed for this, Mr. Chair.
yeah, she's coming.
Okay. Yeah, so the question I have, Mr. Chair, through you to Anita. So the learning and development specialist. So that it's under the category of council approved initiative, meaning that it was approved previously in 2023.
Through Chair Martin to the mayor, Anita Saloki, Director of Human Resources. That particular position, in fact, all 3 positions were approved through the People Master Plan report that was presented to council in August.
Right. And then we have so what is that person going to be doing?
Through Chair Martin to the mayor, the Learning and Development Specialist will be working on online training modules, will be assisting with the implementation of the new learning management system, facilitating training courses, anything to do with learning and development. We have 1 person right now that is the sole person developing all of those training programs and registering people for the corporation's leadership continuum programs. And so that person is really at maximum capacity, and we will need somebody else to facilitate and assist with that.
And then looking into the 2024 to 2027, See, there's an HR recruitment specialist in 2025. What's the justification for that one?
Yep, through Chair Martin to Mayor Davis. The HR recruitment specialist will be focused on additional outreach to the community to expand the need for additional youth opportunities, expanding it to basically diversity, equity, inclusion opportunities, looking at other ways to be able to attract and retain employees. So that will be a key focus for that particular position, working also with our local post-secondary institutions on co-op programs or other unpaid placement opportunities.
Is that taking place right now? Those efforts?
Through Chair Martin to Mayor Davis, not as extensively as we would like it to be, or as that we need it to be in order to be able to have enough resources and minimize the level of recruitment that is required.
And in respect to the other position, HR compensation specialist for 2026, what's the justification for that?
Through Chair Martin to Mayor Davis, the HR compensation specialist role is really focused on doing the market survey analysis that's required to ensure that we maintain competitive wages across the corporation. It's certainly a key issue through collective bargaining, and more, it's something that we need to be much more competitive on, look at updating our benefits program so that we can offer more contemporary opportunities for compensation and benefits.
Right, but isn't that taking place already?
Through Chair Martin to Mayor Davis, it's not happening to the extent that it needs to be. We're always finding that we're behind the market and trying to play catch up and responding to concerns and issues that are being raised by our employees, by our bargaining units, and being able to do that analysis up front will help us to stay ahead of that curve.
Get 3 minutes?
Time's up, yeah. And since the mayor has moved into section 5C, do any other members have questions from section 5C1 to 5C6? Councilor McCreary.
Thank you. Well, Anita's in that hot seat. Can you recollect offhand how many total employees we have?
Through Chair Martin to Councilor McCreary, we have approximately 1,300 employees in total.
Would that be followed by the letters FTE or individuals?
That would be individuals.
Some part-time, some full-time?
Correct.
Thanks, Anita.
Anita, did you say someone was going to be hired to look after diversity and inclusion?
To you, Councilor Martin, it's not specifically focused on diversity and equity and inclusion. The role is more focused on learning and development. So handling a lot of those training programs associated with EDI, as well as on the recruitment side, looking to expand our outreach to build those relationships with agencies. And so there's really 2 positions within HR that we're looking to do that kind of work. But it won't have the same focus within the corporation as a single role that would champion all of the EDI activities. It'll be something that will be done off the side of their desk as time permits and as part of their day-to-day functions.
Okay, as a percentage of their time, what would you think they would do devoting to that?
On the learning and development side, I would say that might be about 15 to 20%, if even that high. On the recruitment side, it would certainly be more than that, and maybe 30%.
Okay, because when we were cutting the one position, the mayor said he felt it was only a half-time position anyway, so it sounds like that's going to be covered off with what you're doing with this hire. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on 5C1 through to 6? Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Clerk's Department. Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to the representatives we have here from the clerk's department. I've only have one question. How did you do it? That minus 2.81%.
Emma Vokes, Deputy Clerk of the Clerk's Department. So we've really had a focus on increasing our revenues, utilizing the resources that we have, as well as finding efficiencies, cutting some costs in all the places that we can.
Yeah, because you're making the mayor's office look bad at a 1.46% increase, so. No, but I did want to commend you, but I guess I'm gonna have to wait till we get to 5C before I can ask about the
Increases?
future increases.
I think we're done with 5C. Unless there's another question, I don't see any. So you had a question for 5D, did you, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I did on,
Go for it.
thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, two clerks. So the 2026 budget, there is an additional complement to licensing compliance officer. So if I could have justification for that.
Jill Binkley, Supervisor of Licensing. Through the chair to Mayor Davis. The request is for a licensing compliance officer to assist in the objectives of the licensing program here with business and professional licenses. So we have a public safety component. With that, we have one licensing compliance officer at the moment, and we have worked hard, as Emma had said, to really focus on bringing in revenues this year. And we've been innovative in the way we are running our compliance programs with the compliance officer, and she's seen a lot of success with it. So her plate is very full, and just looking ahead and the growing demands of our growing city, we're just trying to make sure that we're positioning ourselves and our department in order to meet those needs of the community moving forward.
All right, and so what is the percentage increase in the number of licensing applications?
So we've seen a steady increase over the past 3 years of licenses. We're sitting at just under 1,800 for the year 2023. The licensing year doesn't actually close out for 2023 until March 31st of this year. In 2022, we saw 1,624 licenses, and in 2021, we saw 1,435. So that's specific to business and professional licenses across a number of categories. The licensing compliance officer is also responsible for the lottery portfolio. So she reconciles lottery reports, works with community groups to try and maximize their lottery efforts, to put more dollars out back into the community. So that's a component of the licensing compliance officer position as well.
Okay, seeing nothing further on the capital for Section 5, we'll move on to step 6, community services and social development. Do any members have any questions regarding step 5B, community physician recruitment, 2024 action plan? Okay, 6C 1 to 3, departmental budget. Any questions? Okay, I had one for 6C3, the 143% increase. Seems kind of high. Someone give an explanation as to why that increase is so high?
So two things, Counselor. This is part of it's part of the budget that was submitted to Social Service Committee and also presented to the county, and it came back to council. It's been approved already, that line. So the overall net budget increase for shared services 0.98. The 143 is, you're referring to on 6C3 is, increase in the amount of servicing, for housing and homelessness population, we're dealing with and servicing increases, in shelter space and, outreach services as well. But, that technically, has been approved by council, at the 0.98 at the total budget, just below 6C3.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Mayor Davis.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair, but you're zipping through it so fast. I did want to ask a couple of questions on 5C5 Finance Department. You okay with that?
Go for it.
Thanks. So through you, Chair. This is in respect to the strategic budget investments. There's two of them for 2024. One is covered through development fees, the other finance coordinator budgets. I can have the rationale for that one.
Through the chair to Mayor Davis, Judy Moore, Director of Finance. So the budget coordinator for the finance department is really to help us kind of proactively start moving forward with a lot of our budget initiatives. So this year with the implementation of the multi-year budget, we're also looking at implementing some new software enhancements with our Questica software. So we're looking at our open book software that we've got, which will be a more user-friendly and front-facing piece of our budget software to help explain what our budgets actually are, tell a little bit more stories that the public can actually engage with. It's all AODA compliant, so it meets all of our accessibility standards as well too. So that's something that we're very excited about and we're looking for this position to take on. Also, just as things get more complicated, as our budgets get more complicated, we're just looking to find somebody to actually look through all of our processes, look through our software, be able to make some enhancements, be able to find some efficiencies in the way that we do things, streamline a lot of our activities. And we just don't have anybody available to do that right now. All staff in the department are trying to do that, but it's off the corner of their desk as they're trying to make their way through all of the other projects that they have at this time. So having a resource dedicated to be able to take this on, we think will greatly benefit the department and the corporation.
All right, and in respect to the multi-year 2025, 2027, junior accounting and additional buyers position in purchasing. So the justification for those?
Through the chair to you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the junior accounting analyst is really a position that is going to support both the accounting department and the financial analysis department. So as these divisions have become increasingly more complex and they have very challenging financial needs, and the amount and level of required reporting for both divisions has made it very difficult for these people in the positions in both of those departments to complete administrative tasks. So being able to have a more junior position to be able to help us out with a lot of the administrative tasks that comes along will allow the more senior staff that are already there right now to concentrate on their projects. For the buyer position, the purchasing division continues to experience ongoing resource pressures as a direct result of the capital projects that are coming on and initiatives and the ongoing operational contracts. Due to this demand, procurement requests are being forced to be put into a queue until an available resources can be assigned. So many of these project requests are part of a larger program, and the delay in the procurement process impacts not only the project, but the program and the associated schedules, including delivery of services to the city. So the number of competitive bids that are issued by purchasing steadily increases each year as the capital budget increases. So being able to have an additional resources in that department will be able to help us with all of these future capital projects.
So that brings us to 6D 1 to 3. Any members have anything they'd like to separate? Seeing none, 6E1 or 6E2. Capital projects. Seeing no separations, moves on to step 7, the community development operating capital budget. And Councillor Secoli, I believe you had a conflict.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, can I just go back to 6D3 for one sec? If possible.
Okay.
Just want to get some clarity and some responses, unless I've missed something, but we go from $378,000 in 2024 budget and then an increase to 776, 1.4 and 1.9. Are there builds involved in there that I might have not seen? Just to get some clarity.
Through you, Chair Martin, to Councillor Caputo. So the increases in the housing and homelessness multi-year budget, when you look just at this particular business unit on the city side of housing and homelessness, it really is reinvesting some mortgage savings to housing providers and putting those into the Affordable Housing Reserve, which was part of the funding strategy to build new affordable homes. The reality is the savings part of this is in the cost shared budget. So overall to the city, the net really of this is zero.
Thank you.
Councillor Secoli, you had a conflict?
I do have a conflict. Sorry, I didn't realize we'd get so far in the worksheet this evening, but I do have a conflict on item 7B.4. And this line item contains the salary of an individual to whom I am in a relationship with. Thank you.
Okay, if that gets separated, we'll note your conflict at that time. So step 7. Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speed chair, we'll call him that. Yeah, I've got a question about 6B. I think, Joelle, what number of you, this is community physician recruitment. What number has been entered into our budget for the physician recruitment?
Through Chair Martin to Mayor Davis, the amount of the transfer is $110,000.
Right, and that's the dollar amount that you put into the budget.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Are we done with 6 now? Councillor McCreary.
Chair, since you're showing latitude, could I ask some general questions?
No.
Okay.
The time for that was much, much earlier. So, step 7? Any members have? Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You did a fine job, by the way. It's difficult to, it's easier for me. I got 3 screens going. It makes it easier this way. So I want 7B2, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Okay, so asking the question, so parking enforcement, our parking revenues decreased by $195,675. Is there an explanation for this?
Dave Weidrich, Director of Bylaw and Security, through the chair. The last few years, it's been hoping that parking would come back to the downtown. And this year we actually went with the real numbers. And so that it unfortunately showed a large decrease.
Okay, so this would be a real. Now, we're also increasing our enforcement, property standards enforcement officer. Are we going part-time to full-time and hiring another part-time? Is that what we're doing?
Through the chair, that is correct. We actually have 4 platoons right now, so it would be nice to have 3 officers on every platoon. We're going 1 officer per year for the next 4 years to bring those numbers to where we should be with the growth of the city. And yes, hopefully it'll be moving the part-time into full-time.
Okay, now we operate all shifts, don't we? What hours is our operation in this?
Through the chair, day shift starts at 7 a.m. and afternoon shift can run till midnight from November 1st to April 30th. And then the summertime, we go to 2 a.m. for noise calls.
Okay, and I want to commend you for the work in this department, by the way, and all those in it. It's been very efficient for the city. The other one would be a question on the parking enforcement contract. Is that going to be up by $38,000? Is that why we're putting this into the enforcement services are going up?
Through the chair, we were with a company that declared bankruptcy. We were not the only municipality. We had to go back out to tender, and that is the best company we found. And unfortunately, yes, it was higher amount.
Okay, that answers my questions on those. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor McCurry.
Chair, thank you. So Mr. Weidrich, along with this increased complement of staff that you plan for the next few years, has there been consideration to consolidation of enforcement of all our bylaws within your department?
Through the chair, yes, I'm working with many managers and directors to help them. Operations, the right-of-way bylaw, that will be coming to council. The tree bylaw coming to council. Yes, we're trying to be the officers of the court for all bylaw charges.
And that, sir, is your justification for the laying on of new staff?
Through the chair, that and with the increase of the city, our calls are increased, almost a 30 to 40% increase just since last year for my officers.
Is that because people are more badly behaved in Brantford, or did you publish your phone number?
Through the chair, again, showing up to a complaint and other complaints are seen from that, and we can't just ignore that. So it is increasing that way. And I think with the better hours, better shifts, 7 days a week, I think we're getting better service for the people of the city.
And now let's come back to your comment about parking enforcement. A contracted service, and we're having difficulty finding reasonably priced replacements for the bankrupted folks. So did I hear you right?
Through the chair. So we had a company.
We have a greater cost now because we have a new contractor.
Yes, correct.
Is that a service that our folks could provide in-house?
From my research of other municipalities, even ones I've worked at, this is a better way of doing business. And I have more pros than cons for why we should contract this out.
Thank you for that.
Councilor Carpenter. You're still on mute, Councilor.
Yeah, thank you. Just 7B4. Are we moving all around in the 7B, I guess. Okay, 7B4. Real estate admin is up by almost 13%. Can that be explained? Is that just salaries?
Through the chair, I think I can address that. Michael Bradley, Commissioner of Community Development. Most of that is related to salaries. I think we do have a position that was approved in a previous budget that's annualizing this year, as well as some reevaluation of positions due to new responsibilities.
And how many positions in that admin budget?
I believe we have three people in that group.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else for 7B or 7C? Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It has to do with parking. I think 7C2 is where to ask it. We hadn't finished with section 7. Why are you running off? So my question has to do with the BAA has asked the city to consider 3-hour parking, free 3-hour parking in the parking garage. What would the impact of that be on our revenues?
Through the chair, we did have that figured out. Sorry, it was last month. We'll have to get back to you on the exact numbers on that.
Yeah, would you also, there's also been some comment in the public about parking for Bulldogs games and make an arrangement that parking would be free in the parkade during the week in relation to Bulldog games. What would the cost of that be?
Through the chair, we will get back to you with all those numbers.
Great, thanks.
Councillor McCurry.
Further to the mayor's exploration of the canine topic, dog catching, or modernly known as animal control. Could you update us with respect to our plans for animal control over the life of this budget, and particularly with respect to our capital build?
Through the chair. So we currently will be digging into the ground to build our new animal control facility. That is anticipated to be done by the end of this year. So hopefully by the start of 2025, we'll going out for a tender for someone to look after the dog pound, and then hopefully work in conjunction with an organization for adopting those animals.
And is it our intention to continue to use a third party to provide service?
That will be coming forward in my report for consideration by council as to which way we should go.
And you don't want to spoil the surprise tonight.
Correct.
Thank you.
With that, we've moved into the capital. Anybody have any further questions on step 7? Mayor Davis.
Yes, it's a question through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Weidrich. In respect to the parkade and the camera system, I know when I was through there in December, there was talk of some additional cameras and also upgrading the cameras so they would include a microphone speaker component. Is that included in this budget?
Through the chair, yes. There's many right now there's about 58 projects that we will be starting in this year once the budget passes. That is one of the projects that we'll be doing, and again in stages. So
what, 58 projects for the parkade?
Through the chair, sorry, 58 throughout the entire city. Security is now taking over the security, the cameras, the card access, the alarm, things like that. It's all under one portfolio now, so security, so that we can all have the same system. So if one goes down, we can swap it out, things like that. So in the past, every department has gone whichever way they want to go, whether it's a Radio Shack CCTV camera or a Sony. Now we're sticking to all the same equipment all throughout the city. So all facilities will be the same, and we'll be able to have the same software. So.
And does that include the CCTV cameras in the downtown?
Yes, it will.
So all centrally administered and monitored?
Eventually, that's my goal. Yes, sir.
It's a great goal.
Okay, one more call for item step 7. Councillor McCurry.
With respect to capital, the Advantage Brantford website has a capital request for $100,000, but we just heard from Maria with respect to a $1.5 million upgrade to the .ca website. Is this something that's not going to be, is it not pertinent to do it at the same time? And, or is it, could you explain why it's not part of that expenditure?
Can I just, maybe before Kara responds, just wanted to clarify one thing you mentioned, Councilor McCurry, is 1.5 million that Maria mentioned was for a CRM system. In 2025, she's looking for the $100,000 for the .ca. So I just want to make sure that's clear to work at.
It is now. Okay. Yes, thank you. Yeah. So it's not $1.5 million, it's $100,000 for that item for the .ca.
2025, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you want, sorry, go ahead, Kara.
Hi, Kara Davey, Manager of Tourism, Culture and Sport. The $100,000 is also for 2 websites. It's the Advantage Brantford, which is the economic development website, as well as the Discover Brantford website, which is the tourism entity.
So do you folks have to maintain that yourselves?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's the answer to my question. The other question I have, auditorium steel roof replacement, I presume that references Sanderson Center and just the low building? Or is it the entire building?
Through the chair, Glenn Brown, theater manager at the Sanderson Center. The auditorium steel roof is just the section above the main auditorium itself. All the rest of the roof in the other support areas are all flat roofs.
So it's above the theater, Glenn?
Yes, above the seating
Okay,
area.
thank you for that. Yep.
Glenn, while you're there, follow-up question. Do you know how old the steel roof is that's being replaced?
It was replaced in either 1989 or 1990.
Okay, so yeah, which proves my point. We need to look at more durable roofing materials and more durable materials to reduce our life cycle costs in a lot of areas. And that's a case in point there where the metal roof has lasted a lot longer than asphalt, which saves us money in the long run. So hopefully we'll see more durable materials being utilized. Okay, anything else for step 7? Mayor Davis.
Yeah, I have a question about 7D, the capital plan. The 7D8, which is the airport master plan update, $100,000. And my question, to you, Mr. Bradley, would that go to you or? Yeah, the question is, given the recent initiative to move to a municipal services corporation, having that as the way in which the airport will be managed and governed, does it make sense to spend the $100,000 this year in the airport master plan? And because when a municipal service corporation is in place, maybe a decision to use that money in some other way by the board of that corporation.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we'll be presenting later this month to the airport board a comprehensive business plan that will include both an investment plan as well as the option of a municipal services corporation. So I think that this, but I do believe, however, that the airport master plan does need to be updated because it does need to lay out the capital. So I think if that plan goes forward, then these funds could probably be reallocated because the airport would be self-sustaining. If that plan doesn't go forward, then we probably do need to do this master plan as a municipality. So I think the answer to your question is we don't really know whether these funds should stay in or stay out or go out. So they should probably stay in for the time being.
And how is that going to be paid for, that 100,000? Where's that money going to come from?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's my understanding that the capital funds for the airport are funded through the reserve, which is replenished through airport revenues. Unless Joel has more to add to that.
Well, in view of the answer you gave me, do you think it makes sense then to defer this until next year? Given that the municipal service corporation may decide that based on their priorities, there may be a better way or a more productive way to spend those monies.
Through your worship, I would have no problem with that. I think that if the municipal services corporation will lay out a fairly comprehensive opportunity to repoint the airport's business. So, whether the master plan gets done in a future year, I think that would be fine.
So I would move, Mr. Chair, that we defer the airport master plan update 100,000 to 2025. Provided that the municipal service corporation indicates that that is appropriate disbursement.
Can I just add something here if I can? There, at this point in time, we don't, I think your motion calls for municipal reference to municipal service. We don't have approval yet of the municipal service corporation. So
I'll keep it simple. My motion is a deferral of this item to next year.
Is there a seconder for that? Councilor Secoli? Questions, comments? Councilor McCurry?
Mr. Bradley, could you tell us whether or not the master plan renewal has been considered by the airport board yet? Is that their recommendation, or are they expecting to expend that amount of money in 24?
To the chair, I don't believe that the board has made a recommendation to update the master plan. I believe that came out of the master plan itself, which had a timeline for renewal to it, but the master plan is still quite valid, as the mayor mentioned, where the board will be looking at a business case for some potential change in how the airport is operated, as well as how it's governed. And the master plan is referenced frequently through the business case that we're just finalizing now. So it's still a relevant document. So I think the delay on that is not a problem.
It's interesting how the producers of master plans, mostly Toronto consultants, their last recommendation is please have us back in 5 years.
Yeah, unfortunately, the airport board didn't get a look at the budget that was being submitted on behalf of the airport, so they didn't have a chance to comment on the appropriateness of this expenditure. But just a clarification that if this is deferred, there isn't any savings to this year's taxes because it's a reserve, it's coming from a reserve for the airport. Is that correct?
To you, Chair Martin, yes, that is correct. The money will just remain in the reserve and it'll be accessed next year.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, comments? Councilor McCurry.
So just to be clear then, if the money is there in the reserve to be spent this year, if staff and the board decide that that's the right time, if that doesn't get done, the reserve will still live on and the money could be spent the following year. So
Yes, that is correct. There's no operational budget impact
yeah, so
in
there's no
deferring this
no
capital
dollar
project.
no dollar impact to the taxpayer.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Mayor Davis.
Yeah, the purpose of my motion isn't so much to generate cost savings, but it's recognizing that what we have in plan for the airport will be through a municipal service corporation, which will have a board of directors. And the board of directors will have to decide what the priorities will be for that corporation for the airport. And thus they may decide that there's a more productive way to spend this $100,000 in reserve on some other item relating to the airport that's in keeping with the vision that the Municipal Service Corporation has for the airport. So the master plan update may be kind of redundant if, depending on what direction the board of directors takes from Municipal Service Corporation. So it's really about making sure that money is spent and the timing of the spending of the money is appropriate and productive, given the plan we have for changing the way in which the airport is overseen and managed.
A question to staff. If the Municipal Service Corporation model is adopted and becomes part of the governance of the airport, would then this budget item not become redundant and that corporation would spend the money as they see fit in any case?
Through the chair, I don't think we've quite got that far. I think the future of the airport reserve would have to be determined by council as to whether it's going to be flowed over to the Municipal Services Corporation, whether it's going to be held by the municipality for future use or other options. So that kind of detail, I think, is yet to be worked out. So my focus at this point is on the business plan that could operate the airport under a Municipal Service Corporation and the structure of that corporation and the positives and negatives around that.
And do we know how much is in the airport reserve at this time?
Through the chair, the estimated opening balance at the beginning of 2024 is just over $638,000.
And is any of that committed? I believe we're building some T hangers.
In the 2024 budget, there's $150,000 that's set to go out, but we are anticipating additional reserve receipts to come in through the operating budget in 2024 as well.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Carpenter.
Yes, I just maybe to say, oh, will the municipal service corporation be answerable still to the city and the taxpayers?
Sorry, Counselor, I missed one key word. Will be,
Will they be accountable and to the city council and the taxpayers?
yes, eventually the Municipal Service Corporation does report up to council and there's a reporting mechanism. Again, as Commissioner Bradley mentioned, we have not defined the governance terms yet. So that is all going to be coming to council. I mean, Commissioner Bradley's just prepared a business case and gave it to me on Monday. And he'll be presenting that to the airport board, which will then come to council, make that decision whether Municipal Service Corporation be going forth or not. The governance structure and the accountability structure will also be dealt with there in that report. Will come to council.
Okay, I'd hope that any taxpayers' funds that have been expended over the past and in the future will be accountable to taxpayers. Thank you.
Seeing nothing further, we'll call the vote on this item.
Just as a reminder to council, we are using the Estimates Committee meeting in East Gripe for January 27th.
What are you waiting for? Counselor Hunt, did you vote yet? Come through.
The amendment carries on a recorded vote of 9 to 2. Those voting in favor, Mayor Davis, Councilor Secoli, Sullivan, Caputo, Les, Carpenter, Hunt, Samuel, and Venterborg. Those councilors voting against, Councilor Martin and McCreary.
Okay, anything else on community development? Mayor Davis.
Yes, in reference to the Sanderson Center capital item. And it's 7D12. The window and door replacement. Which windows and doors, and what is wrong with the windows and doors that are there now that they need to be replaced?
Through the chair, this project is primarily focused on the historic original doors that are in from the Heritage Hall area into the lower lobby. In order to give us some more flexibility with rental of the facility in the rehearsal hall area, we need to be able to lock those doors, and currently we're not able to put any kind of panic hardware to lock them. So it's to provide some security for that back area when the full building is not in use. Because they are original, we expect that there will be some premiums on costs in order to make it historically consistent with the rest of the building and its architecture. And there's also some interior doors that need to be replaced as well. We did the exterior doors a couple of years ago, and now it's time to do the interior glass panel doors.
And in follow-up, where would those funds come from?
This project is funded from the theater's reserve fund. We have one that receives a contribution of $90,000 per year to that reserve.
And what is the balance currently in the reserve?
Through the chair to the mayor, the balance currently in that reserve before this project is $265,000.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, another Sanderson capital item, which is 7D13, the stage personnel lift replacement. What exactly is that, and how old is it, assuming this is a replacement?
I might need to just follow that link to be sure of my dates. Yeah. Sorry, I might need to get back to you on the age of the current lift, but the lift is used during setup for events to focus the lights on the stage area. It's also used throughout the building for building maintenance to reach the higher areas of the lobbies as well as the auditorium ceiling.
And so Glenn, what is the reason for replacing it at this time? As opposed to keeping what you currently have and just making the best use of that?
The lift is designed to be battery operated and functional for a couple of hours at a time to do the lighting focus. The batteries, for some reason, whether it's electronics or whatever, are constantly needing servicing. So there's a heightened repair cost with the existing unit. And rather than continuing on with that, we'd rather go with one that is current and safe. And I'm told that the lift is now 21 years old.
And my last question for you, Glenn, on the capital items, the center venue management platform, what exactly is that and why does it, what's the reason for upgrading it?
Currently, we're using a system that evolved over several years since 2007, which is a collection of multiple Microsoft Access databases that were created by our staff and constantly being updated to add in new features. All the staff who have knowledge of how that works are certainly on a retirement track for the next couple of years. It's been consistently flagged as a barrier to sharing of information, especially now that we are under our reorg, we are using much more assistance from our communications and tourism staff who are outside of the building. So making sure that information sharing across all those stakeholders in the city is an important one. Yeah, just knowing that the current system will not really have anybody who can keep it maintained in the long term means that a replacement now, while we've still got that institutional knowledge, is vital.
Thanks, Glenn.
Okay, moving on to step 8, which is corporate financing. Do any members wish to separate any department budget? Steps 8B1 to 8B15. Seeing none, do any members want to separate department budget steps 8C1 to C15? Councilor McCurry.
Chair, thank you. 8C2, we have a small increase in the last segment of our, I see. We have an 8.47% increase in police board honorariums this year. And then we have increases in minor increases the next 3 years. Have we done that annually? It seems to me it might have been a while since we increased those honorariums.
I do believe the Police Services Board increases are part of the overall compensation bylaw,
Okay.
and that those members would receive increases.
So they would be on the same basis as non-union city staff,
I believe so.
counselors.
I believe so,
Okay.
yes.
And has there ever been consideration given to a bump with respect to the honorarium paid to the person who is in the chair of that organization?
I can't speak to that, but I believe all the chair and the members are included in the compensation bylaw.
I didn't mean annualized. I meant in recognition of the significant amount of work that the chairman or chairperson does on that committee, not including Councillor Martin, who chairs it now, because he doesn't get any extra money for it. We work him like a rented donkey, in fact, out at Elgin Street. But when it's a citizen or a provincial rep, should we be giving consideration to a greater degree of compensation for being in the chair there? That's my question, Joelle.
I believe that would likely be a decision of the board.
Okay, so that would be something that if the board chose, the board could recommend it to us and we could consider it?
Yes, that would be correct, in the same manner that the increase for the executive assistant was approved by the board, which is what is impacting 2024.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Anything else for section step 8? Seeing none, this concludes tonight's estimate committee meeting. Next, step 9, Public Works operating and capital budgets will be discussed at the next estimates committee meeting on Monday, January 15th. So with that, we are now recessed until the next meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, you went from step 8A, B, you didn't get to C, did you? I didn't hear you say 8C. You were moving through each one by A, B, and C. You didn't get to C.
Do you have questions on C?
I have one question on
Yeah,
C.
go ahead.
It won't take that long, actually. So it's a 8C14. I know it doesn't have a number there, but is that the last payment of $521,000 to grant for Wilfrid Laurier Athletic Complex? So to staff, that frees up $521,000 in CINO funding? Would that be a fair statement?
I can, okay, go ahead, Joelle.
Yeah, I just had to get back to the page. Yes, so this is the contribution to the Wailouri Athletic Complex. It's zero because it is fully funded from Casino. So overall, the net impact is zero, but the payment does go away beginning in 2026. The final payment is 2025.
Oh yeah, I see that. Okay, so then, and that time we could maybe reallocate that to say the future hospital bill. Thank you.
Can I
Thank
just,
you,
can I just jump in to Councilor Carpenter's
Sure.
comment? There was a report that was done in November, Councilor Carpenter, that these monies be reallocated to the mid-sized performance theater at Wilfrid Laurier University at the 1 Market Street site to pay for half of the capital there. So that was approved by council back in November. We're still waiting to sign the agreement with Laurier to make sure they can come up with their half. But that's what that money was committed to after it runs out, and then it would kick into the Laurier monies.
Okay, so if that agreement doesn't get signed up, it'll come back to us with an opportunity to reallocate that funding.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on step 8? Any of the letters? Seeing none, we are recessed until January 15th, 4:30.